Good afternoon. The article I chose is Monster to Martyr, Representing Mary Dyer by Anne G. Miles. This article provided an in-depth look at the person, the writings, and the influence of Mary Dyer in Puritan New England. Mary's first appearance with real significance is attached to Anne Hutchinson's trial. At the time, the two women were very good friends, and when Anne was banished by the maternal court, Mary stood up and walked out of the building with her. The author of the article, Miles, saw this as an open act of dissent and solidarity between the two women. But any chance of really understanding and questioning Mary as to why she did what she did was lost in the moment because the Puritan people and the ministers only really saw Mary as the mother of a monster. Unfortunately, Mary had a pregnancy where she gave birth early to a very deformed child, and the ministers and the Puritan people saw this as God's divine punishment for taking part in Anne Hutchinson's dissenting. It's very unfortunate. But eventually, Mary and her husband moved to Rhode Island, and for a time, we don't really hear anything about Mary. She kind of slides into silence. And it's 20 years later that we hear of Mary again, and it's when she comes back from a trip to London. She has become a Quaker. And when she disembarks in Boston, she's actually picked up and imprisoned by local authorities. And this will be the first of 3 times that Mary is imprisoned for being a Quaker. The other 2 focus on her going back into Massachusetts after she was banished upon pain of death to visit other Quaker missionaries that had been imprisoned. This would be, while she was imprisoned the 3rd time, Mary wrote 2 letters to the Massachusetts General Court, basically reproving, beseeching, and warning the General Court of the consequences of their shedding innocent blood simply because of a difference in beliefs. Mary compares herself to Queen Esther and the General Court to the King Xerxes, with Mary being willing to give up her life to save her people. The Mass General Court did not heed Mary's writings at the time, which unfortunately led to, after her 3rd imprisonment, her death by being hanged. Mary's martyrdom would serve as the sacrifice that would later influence King Charles II to issue a decree that forbade such executions in the future. And in some ways, Dyer's rebellion also lends its influence to the movement that would lead to religious liberty. Dyer stands as a testament to the dissenting factions in New England, giving a richer and much fuller voice to a sect whose writings have not received much scholarly attention, and to a gender that was most often voiceless in the annals of history. All 3 sources that I studied spoke to the importance of Mary's writings and the future for future research that focuses on dissenting voices rather than the majority voice of the Puritan leaders. I really enjoyed reading this article. I found it very fascinating, some of the points that Miles brought up. And I, like Miles, found it very odd after reading the article that Anne Hutchinson would have so much more attention devoted to her in scholarly research rather than Mary Dyer, because Mary Dyer has an extant body of literature that she left behind her, and Anne Hutchinson did not. So I found this pretty odd, but Miles does make the point that it's only recently that scholarly attention has kind of shifted from the main majority voice of the Puritan people and shifts towards the dissenting people and kind of studying their voice in all of this. The other point that I'd like to bring up that I saw throughout studying this that I thought was very interesting was also the hypocrisy of the Puritans in killing people that disagreed with them simply because they disagreed with them. I think it's very odd that a people group who prided themselves on sola scriptura, that only believing in the scriptures and the authority of the scriptures, would be okay with killing someone because both the Old Testament and the New Testament never give provision for murder if someone disagrees with your beliefs. So I think it's very interesting that this particular group would allow laws that basically kills people for dissenting when they were so dedicated to the authority of Scripture. But that's all for now. Thank you for listening to this video, and I hope you guys all have a really great afternoon. Thanks.